Richard Nixon went on to win the election for president in 1968. He won a landslide victory for re-election in 1972 over Democrat George McGovern. Shortly after the election, however, evidence surfaced implicating the president in wrongdoing. On June 17, 1972, a group of Nixon campaign workers were caught breaking into Democratic National Headquarters in the Watergate Hotel. The break-in made little news until 1 year later, when grand jury investigations, congressional testimony, and press articles revealed a trail of bribery, perjury, and intimidation pointing to the president. In May 1973, Congress began hearings to determine whether to impeach the president, the highlight of which was an impassioned call for reason by a little-known first-term member of Congress, Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan grew up listening to her father, a Baptist minister, every Sunday. In high school, she entered a public speaking contest and won second place. She took note of the dramatic techniques of the victor, and the following year won the local, state, and national rounds. After graduating from law school, she volunteered for the 1960 Kennedy-Johnson campaign. Local campaign officials put Jordan to work stuffing envelopes and making phone calls. When a campaign official was unable to speak at a local rally, Jordan volunteered. Her performance was so good that she was given a full-time job as spokesperson for the campaign. After the election, she continued speaking to local organizations. 6 years later, Jordan won election to the Texas state legislature. Within the state Senate, Jordan developed a reputation for frankness. When legislators made statements she considered irrelevant, Jordan would rise from her seat and announce, "That's a very amusing comment, but let's get on with the vote." Her colleagues soon dubbed her the Voice. In 1972, Jordan was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, becoming the first black candidate elected to the U.S. House from the Deep South since Reconstruction. As a freshman member of Congress, Jordan received last choice in committee assignments. She selected the normally staid Judiciary Committee. Within 1 year, the committee would become center stage for hearings on the first presidential impeachment in more than a century. After 14 months of investigations, the House Judiciary Committee prepared to vote on whether or not to recommend impeachment. Each committee member was allowed a 15-minute statement. Order was determined by seniority, and Jordan was scheduled to appear late in the day. By 5 p.m., testimony still continued. Most speeches were marked by partisan assumptions of the president's guilt or innocence. While Jordan had listened attentively, she still had not decided what to say. During the dinner recess, she outlined what she believed were the main issues. Did the committee have the authority to investigate, and was an investigation warranted? At 10 till 2 in the morning, she began her remarks.
Earlier today, we heard the beginning of the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. We the people. It's a very eloquent beginning. But when that document was completed on the 17th of September in 1787, I was not included in that we the people. I felt somehow for many years that George Washington and Alexander Hamilton just left me out by mistake. But through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, I have finally been included in we the people. Today I am an inquisitor, and hyperbole would not be fictional and would not overstate the solemnness that I feel right now. My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total. And I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, the destruction of the Constitution. It is wrong, I suggest, it is a misreading of the Constitution for any member here to assert that for a member to vote for an article of impeachment means that that member must be convinced that the president should be removed from office. The Constitution doesn't say that. The powers relating to impeachment are an essential check in the hands of the body, the legislature, against and upon the encroachments of the executive. The division between the two branches of the legislature, the House and the Senate, assigning to the one the right to accuse and to the other the right to judge. The framers of this Constitution were very astute. They did not make the accusers and the judges the same person. We know the nature of impeachment. We've been talking about it a while now. It is chiefly designed for the president and his high ministers to somehow be called into account. It is designed to bridle the executive if he engages in excesses. It is designed as a method of national inquest into the conduct of public men. The framers limited impeachment to high crimes and misdemeanors and discounted and opposed the term maladministration. Common sense would be revolted if we engaged upon this process for petty reasons. Congress has a lot to do. Appropriations, tax reform, health insurance, campaign finance reform, housing, environmental protection, energy sufficiency, mass transportation. Pettiness cannot be allowed to stand in the face of such overwhelming problems. So today we're not being petty. We're trying to be big because the task we have before us is a big one. This morning, in a discussion of the evidence, we are told that the evidence which purports to support the allegations of misuse of the CIA by the president is thin. We're told that that evidence is insufficient. What that recital of the evidence this morning did not include is what the president did know on June the 23rd, 1972. The president did know that it was Republican money, that it was money from the Committee for the Re-election of the President, which was found in the possession of one of the burglars arrested on June the 17th. What the president did know on the 23rd of June was the prior activities of E. Howard Hunt, which included his participation in the break-in of Daniel Ellsberg, psychiatrist, which included Howard Hunt's participation in the Dita Beard ITT affair, which included Howard Hunt's fabrication of cables designed to discredit the Kennedy administration. We were further cautioned today that perhaps these proceedings ought to be delayed because certainly there would be new evidence forthcoming from the President of the United States. There has not even been an obfuscated indication that this committee would receive any additional materials from the President. The committee subpoena is outstanding, and if the President wants to supply that material, the committee sits here. The fact is that on yesterday, the American people waited with great anxiety for 8 hours, not knowing whether their president would obey an order of the Supreme Court of the United States. At this point, I would like to juxtapose a few of the impeachment criteria with some of the actions the president has engaged in. Impeachment criteria. James Madison, from the Virginia Ratification Convention. If the president be connected in any suspicious manner with any person and there be grounds to believe that he will shelter him, he may be impeached. We have heard time and time again that the evidence reflects the payment to defendants, money. The president had knowledge that these funds were being paid, and these were collected for the 1972 presidential campaign. We know that the president met with Mr. Henry Peterson 27 times to discuss matters related to Watergate, and immediately thereafter met with the very persons who were implicated in the information Mr. Peterson was receiving. The words are, if the president is connected in any suspicious manner with any person, and there be grounds to believe that he will shelter that person, he may be impeached. James Madison again at the Constitutional Convention. A president is impeachable if he attempts to subvert the Constitution. The Constitution charges the president with the task of taking care that the laws be faithfully executed. And yet, the president has counseled his aides to commit perjury, willfully disregard the secrecy of grand jury proceedings, conceal surreptitious entry, attempt to compromise a federal judge, while publicly displaying his cooperation with the processes of criminal justice. A president is impeachable if he attempts to subvert the Constitution. If the impeachment provision in the Constitution of the United States will not reach the offenses charged here, the 18th century Constitution should be abandoned to a 20th century paper shredder. Has the president committed offenses and planned and directed and acquiesced in a course of conduct which the Constitution will not tolerate? That's the question. We know that. We know the question. We should now forthwith proceed to answer the question. It is reason and not passion which must guide our deliberations, guide our debate, and guide our decision. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
R.W. Apple, writing in the New York Times, called Jordan's testimony a needed lecture in constitutional law. Within 15 days, Nixon announced his resignation rather than face impeachment proceedings. 20 members of Nixon's administration would go on to be convicted. And Barbara Jordan was asked to give the keynote address at the 1976 Democratic National Convention.